Lewis and Clark in Great Falls, Montana. Walking and driving in the footsteps of the core of discovery in Montana is a rare kind of pilgrimage, one that is particularly emotional here, where the journey tested them most: grizzlies, portage routes, towering cliffs, and the quest to find the source of the Missouri River. Today, I will be touring the city of Great Falls and following the historic portage route along both sides of the Missouri River. Seeing the Great Falls waterfall will help connect me with the legacy of the Lewis and Clark expedition. I rose at dawn, the kind of morning when the weather was Montana crisp, and I made a beeline for Walmart to grab a pair of gloves, to keep my fingers from freezing while I gripped the steering wheel as I explored. The city of Great Falls. The name Montana comes from the Spanish word montaña, meaning mountain or mountainous region. It was chosen because of the state's rugged terrain, especially the towering Rocky Mountains that dominate its western half. Montana's state motto is Oro y Plata, which is Spanish for gold and silver. It was officially adopted in 1865 to reflect the state's rich mining heritage during the gold rush era. The phrase appears on Montana's state seal and flag, symbolizing both the literal mineral wealth that helped shape the territory and the broader idea of opportunity and prosperity. It's also why Montana is nicknamed the Treasure State. Montana is a state of sweeping landscapes, rich history, and rugged independence, aptly nicknamed Big Sky Country. On this trip, I plan to travel along the trail from 1805 toward the Pacific and 1806, the return to St. Louis. The role of Montana in both segments of the expedition is profound, not merely as a pathway, but as a crucible of endurance, diplomacy, and discovery. Montana holds significant importance for those retracing the steps of Lewis and Clark. Notably, Montana encompasses more miles of the Lewis and Clark Trail than any other state, with both the 1805 westbound and 1806 eastbound routes offering dramatic landscapes and pivotal historical moments. During the Lewis and Clark expedition, 1804 to 1806, the core of discovery passed through the traditional homelands of at least 8 tribal nations in what is now Montana. Tribal nations Lewis and Clark encountered in present-day Montana: Shoshone, Salish, Flathead, Nez Perce, Blackfeet, Crow, and Sioux. Lewis and Clark often relied on indigenous knowledge, hospitality, and trade to survive and navigate the terrain. Their journals are filled with observations of tribal life, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Montana's landscape bears the echoes of some of the most pivotal and heartbreaking battles in American history, particularly those of the Indian Wars and the Nez Perce War. Here are the most famous battlefields that I will visit on the trail, each with its own unique historical significance. Little Bighorn Battlefield, site of Custer's last stand, 1876, near Crow Agency. Rosebud Battlefield, where Lakota and Cheyenne warriors fought General Crook, 1876. Big Hole Battlefield, a tragic clash during the Nez Perce War, 1877. Bear Paw Battlefield, where Chief Joseph surrendered in 1877, ending the Nez Perce flight. Each of these sites tells a powerful story of resistance, survival, and the unwavering spirit of the Native American tribes in the face of the shifting tides of American history. Contrary to my expectations of solitude, the streets were bustling with school buses transporting children. I passed 2 schools, one named Lewis and Clark Elementary, known as the Explorers. There are approximately 20 elementary schools across the United States named Lewis and Clark Elementary. These institutions are distributed among several states along the Lewis and Clark expedition route, where their legacy is intricately woven into local history and education. Montana is the land of Sacagawea. I also stopped here at Sacagawea Elementary School, known as the Wolves. There are at least 5 elementary schools in the United States currently named after Sacagawea, also spelled Sacagawea, the Shoshone woman who played a pivotal role in the Lewis and Clark expedition. Collaborated, her name still echoes across street signs, schools, statues, and storybooks, spotlighting her Montana journey. Sacagawea would go on to play a vital role in one of the most essential expeditions in American history. Her knowledge of the land, languages, and survival skills helped guide the Corps of Discovery through the wilderness, including her return to Montana, the land of her childhood. Sacagawea gave birth to her son, Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau, on February 11, 1805, in a Hidatsa village near the Knife River in present-day North Dakota. She was just 16 years old at the time. Just 2 months after his birth, Jean-Baptiste joined the Corps of Discovery as they departed Fort Mandan in April 1805. Sacagawea is believed to have more statues dedicated to her than any other woman in American history. Her legacy as a guide, mother, and symbol of peace has inspired artists, historians, and communities across the country. She represents courage, resilience, and cultural connection. A young indigenous woman who carried her infant across thousands of miles of wilderness. Many of her statues were commissioned by women's groups, especially during the early 20th century, to honor her as a symbol of female strength and patriotism. June 14, 1805, Meriwether Lewis vs. the grizzly. While scouting alone near the Great Falls of the Missouri, Lewis spotted a large herd of bison. He shot one for meat, but in his excitement, he forgot to reload his rifle, a critical mistake on the frontier. A grizzly bear suddenly charged from just 20 paces away. With no time to reload and no trees nearby, Lewis grabbed his espontoon, a type of spear, and ran full speed toward the river about 80 yards away. The escape. Lewis plunged into the Missouri, hoping the bear would hesitate in the water. Waist deep he turned, ready to fight, and saw the bear had stopped its pursuit and wandered off. He later wrote about the encounter with a mix of awe and relief, then reloaded his rifle and continued scouting as if nothing had happened. Today, a life-size steel sculpture of a grizzly stands along the River's Edge Trail in Great Falls, marking the approximate location of this wild encounter. One of the most iconic artists ever to live in Great Falls, Montana, was Charles Marion Russell, often called the cowboy artist. He didn't just live there, he helped define the mythos of the American West through over 4,000 paintings, sculptures, and illustrations of cowboys, Native Americans, and sweeping frontier landscapes. His home and studio in Great Falls are now part of the C.M. Russell Museum Complex, which houses the largest collection of his work. His 1912 mural, Lewis and Clark Meeting Indians at Ross's Hole, still hangs in the Montana State Capitol. It's a massive mural, measuring 25 feet long, commissioned for the Montana State Capitol in Helena. Old American bison coat on display in the C.M. Russell Museum in Great Falls, Montana. Charles M. Russell's studio in Great Falls was more than just a workspace. It was a rustic sanctuary where art, memory, and Montana's wild spirit converged. He did work there year-round, especially after settling into full-time painting in the 1890s. His log cabin studio, built in 1903, was designed to reflect the life he loved: rough-hewn logs, buffalo skulls, native artifacts, and a stone fireplace. His studio contained a variety of items, including saddles, rifles, beadwork, and occasionally live animals, to ensure the accuracy of details. Painting by the fire, Russell was known to work by the warmth of that fireplace, especially during Montana's long winters. He would often sit with a brush in one hand and a cigar or pipe in the other, surrounded by the smell of burning wood and the quiet hum of memory. The fire was not just for heat, it set the mood. It helped him channel the stories of cowboys, buffalo hunts, and tribal life that he brought to life on canvas. He painted year-round, but winter was especially productive. Fewer distractions, more time to reflect. He often worked from memory and imagination, not just sketches, which gave his work a dreamlike authenticity. The Horseman by Charles M. Russell, the vintage stamp printed in USA, shows Montana 1889 to 1989, 100th anniversary of the state of Montana. It will be my starting point for my immersive journey through one of America's most significant expeditions, which involved a grueling portage around the 5 waterfalls of the Missouri River. I'm going to read about it first and then walk it and completely experience it. Montana is rich in Lewis and Clark history. While the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Great Falls is the most prominent, there are several other key sites and centers across the state that commemorate the expedition. The Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center sits on a bluff overlooking the Missouri River, adjacent to Giant Springs State Park, an area the Corps of Discovery traversed in 1805 during their epic portage around the 5 waterfalls. The Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, located in Great Falls, is recognized as the flagship center, offering immersive exhibits, films, and trails that focus on the expedition's 12-day portage around the falls of the Missouri River. Lewis and Clark were an exceptional pair due to their well-matched skills. Together, they created a unique leadership team. Lewis, the scientist and planner, Clark is the navigator and reliable support. Their united abilities contributed to their legendary status. Lewis and Clark encountered 50 Native American tribes during their expedition, each with its own distinct culture, language, and relationship to the land. Several historically significant tribal nations in and around present-day Montana had a profound influence on the expedition's experience. Seaman, the unsung four-legged hero of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Seaman was a Newfoundland dog purchased by Meriwether Lewis in 1803. Lewis chose the breed for its strength, swimming ability, and calm temperament, perfect for a journey into the unknown. Symbol of the expedition. Statues of Seaman now stand alongside Lewis and Clark in places like Fort Mandan and here in Great Falls. He is remembered not just as a pet, but as a working member of the Corps of Discovery. Sacagawea was born around 1788 into the Agaidika, salmon eater, band of the Lemhi Shoshone, near present-day Salmon, Idaho, close to the Idaho-Montana border. This mountainous region was her ancestral home, rich in rivers, wildlife, and tribal traditions. Sacagawea carried her infant son, Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau, in a traditional native style, tied to her back throughout the entire Lewis and Clark expedition. Pompey, as William Clark affectionately nicknamed him, became a constant companion on the journey west. At the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Great Falls, Native American clothing is thoughtfully represented as part of the broader story of the expedition and its encounters with indigenous nations. Mandan Indian robe on a bison hide at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Montana. Mandan Indian robe on a bison hide with artwork depicting battles. The robe is on display at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Great Falls, Montana. Bust of President Thomas Jefferson, the sponsor of the Lewis and Clark expedition, and a 15-star American flag. Thomas Jefferson was the driving force behind the Lewis and Clark expedition, its visionary, architect, and biggest supporter. As president, Jefferson dreamed of a transcontinental America. After the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, which doubled the size of the U.S., he saw an urgent need to explore and map the vast new territory. Lewis and Clark Expedition Centennial Commemorative Plate. Lewis and Clark Expedition Centennial Commemorative Brown and White Transferware Plate from 1904, on display at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Great Falls, Montana. The painted buffalo sculptures in Great Falls are part of a public art project called The Great Buffalo Hunt, launched in 2003 by the C.M. Russell Museum to celebrate the upcoming Lewis and Clark Bicentennial in 2005. Art meets heritage. Local artists were invited to paint nearly life-sized fiberglass bison, each turning their buffalo into a unique work of art. The goal was to honor the cultural, historical, and ecological significance of the American bison, an animal revered by Plains tribes and iconic of the American West. Portage route overview. Start, Lower Portage Camp, about 1 mile below Belt Creek, Portage Creek. End, Upper Portage Camp, near the White Bear Islands above the falls. Distance, roughly 18 miles overland. Duration, June 16 through 28, 1805. The Lewis and Clark portage around the Great Falls of the Missouri River ended at what they called the Upper Portage Camp, located just above the fifth and final waterfall, Black Eagle Falls, near present-day Great Falls, Montana. They hauled canoes, supplies, and even the iron frame boat across rugged terrain filled with prickly pear cactus, steep ravines, and grizzly bears. It was one of the most grueling legs of the entire expedition. The Great Falls portage was one of the most grueling physical and mental challenges of the entire Lewis and Clark expedition. Here's what they were up against during those 18 punishing miles. Life-sized replica of Lewis and Clark's portage over the Great Falls in Montana. Life-sized replica of the portage of a canoe over the Great Falls of the Missouri River in Montana by men on the Lewis and Clark expedition. On display at the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail Interpretive Center, diorama of portage of a wooden canoe over a hill at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Great Falls, Montana. Diorama of portage of a wooden canoe over a hill to bypass the Great Falls of the Missouri River by men on the Lewis and Clark expedition near present-day Great Falls, Montana. The Lewis and Clark Festival is held in Great Falls, Montana. Each year, here at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, it's a whole weekend of history, culture, and celebration, and is traditionally held in the third week of June of each year. The Lewis and Clark statue at Overlook Drive offers a stunning view of the Missouri River and commemorates the explorers' arrival at the Great Falls. It is a popular photo spot and serves as a powerful symbol of their westward expansion. The Great Falls,